Every time I had to weed half-inch type, the cost went up twice-fold. So
isn't that the irony? I'm so happy for print now, dude, because back in the day,
oh, it's the best.
what we're talking about, Rena, so when you see letters on like the hours on a door, on a storefront or something like whatever, it's usually white and it looks like paint, but it's vinyl sticky. Well, that gets cut, fed through a machine, like a paper towel roll kind of.
Computer-controlled X-Acto knife.
And then like a little tiny, barely scratches the surface, XY axis CAD machine cuts it, and then you have to pull apart the part you don't want and transfer the part you do want up onto the glass. Well, that process is called weeding. The issue is, obviously, when we're talking about, the smaller you get, the way harder it is. If the font
because it all wants to come off together.
Yeah, and the knife gets, I mean, there's some point of practicality, analog practicality right there. The knife can only cut so finite, but the customer's mind is smaller, cheaper, smaller, cheaper, cheaper. How about if we just go smaller? And the sign guy's thinking, no, make it bigger. I swear I'll charge you less. Please make the numbers bigger. Yeah, no, it's pretty funny.
Yep, nope, and we've all gone hunting for the dot of an I that went flying off while going through the process. All of that. It's like the world's stickiest Easter egg hunt. It's terrible.
That is Ted Redmer from Alliance Franchise Brands. You might know them from Image 360, Signs Now, and Signs by Tomorrow. Today we're talking with Ted about technology. What are the latest, greatest ways to host files, to process work, and to get customers in and out the door quickly? We're going to talk about that, a little bit of his background, and just kind of have a good time, man. Ted's a cool cat, and I think we had a lot in common. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. You traveled far from where you are now? Have you lived in the same area most of your life?
I've lived in the same area, but I've traveled a fair amount since about 2000 professionally.
Nice.
So I've been to most of the country at this point. I've been to all the places I want to be. A lot of the flyover states have remained flyover states, but
dude, I ended up in a flyover state. I had no idea how I ended up here. I mean, I know how in hindsight, but nowhere in my plan was like, let's go to Oklahoma.
There you go.
It turns out it's awesome. I can't say enough good things about Oklahoma.
I do. You're familiar with Fellers? Formerly Ameriban.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're one of our major suppliers, and they're in Tulsa.
No kidding.
And they used to do vehicle wrap training classes, and I went in through that for that certification in Tulsa. And it's like the old Wayne's World, like, oh, I'm in Delaware.
Right, yeah. It totally feels like that. In fact, here in OKC reminds me a lot of California in my high school days.
Gotcha.
Just shoot back, 30, 40 years, and fewer laws, fewer, the coast has not quite seeped all the way into the innards. And
the surfing scene really hasn't developed yet either.
It hasn't quite as hip. The surfboard, the skateboards are still huge. They're the pool-sized decks, and we have lots of empty pools. So, yeah, it's coming along. It's like 1978 here in Oklahoma.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah. Were you always a sign guy or a graphics person?
I mean, for my whole professional career, yeah. I started, I guess I was working in sounds like the beginning of a song. I was working in a grocery store in 1999, and one of the boyfriends of one of my coworkers was a sign installer and fabricator for one of our local franchises in the Baltimore area. And I knew I was just about to start college, and I knew I was going through with a graphic design degree. And I figured, hey, the sign industry might not be a bad place to kind of start with that. And it's a practical application of design. And what I didn't know is that the sign industry is a lot like the mob. I try to get out, but they keep pulling me back in. So really, since 2000, that's kind of been what I did. So when people say what did I do before signs, it's pretty much worked on a farm, McDonald's, and stock shelves at a grocery store. Everything else has been dealing with vinyl and print and all the things that go along with it.
That's wild, dude. How did you decide? It's a big leap to tell your family I'm going to be a graphic designer. From the farm to graphic design, were they like, That's a great hobby, son. Come on, help me
Well,
hook up the trailer or something like
so
that.
my father was a Navy vet, meat packer, biker, and so when I told him that I was getting an art degree, it did he referred to it as my coloring degree for a number of years until
Hey,
I moved a little bit up the ladder,
it
and
sounds like
the paycheck's starting to get a little bit more real.
it sounds like the guys in the warehouse, man. The
Yeah.
salespeople, and the warehouse guys, Rena, in the sign industry, are always calling designers the guys painting the color, making pretty pictures, and this
Oh, absolutely.
so
Yep.
derisive. It's hella funny.
Oh, it's tough because in my capacity, I work with hiring, and folks are talking like, oh yeah, definitely, I need somebody who's going to be my salesperson. I'm going to need somebody for fulfillment and yep, a designer or something.
Whatever.
Yeah, don't put too much thought in it. Get find somebody. We can if we can't offshore it, I guess we could finally pay somebody,
Right,
but
right.
not a living wage by any means.
Yeah, the pretty pictures. Yeah, that's cool. So that's interesting because you brought up something fascinating that I discovered early on too, was the practical application of design. If you want to be a designer, how do you make a living at it? Because I'd seen a lot of people with, back in the day, it was desktop publishing and making newsletters, and I'm like, that can't scale. I mean, and we already saw email was then the thing, so I'm like, what the hell? So what? And I was working in broadcasting, like I was trying to be in TV. So I was a designer, and I wanted to be on TV. But then I realized the same thing over there. I'm like, well, there's no money here. Everybody,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
all the
you
news
picked
anchors have the money.
You've picked both industries that don't pay creative talent.
Right,
So,
and this was my backup to being Kiss. This is my backup to being a rock star. So
Right, right,
all my
yeah.
Plan B and Plan C all suck with regards to pay
my
rates.
my original goal of being a world famous designer that got flown around on and taken around on yachts didn't really pan out. So like, let's make some stickers.
Yeah, no, literally. I mean, that's so true because I was commuting back and forth. Let's make it all about me. No, but I was going back and forth to my internship at the network. It was a network affiliate in San Francisco, and I realized, wait, I'm losing money between parking and travel.
Yep.
So the partner at the time wanted to become my wife. We wanted to have kids. I'm like, oh, this is going to work out very well. So, ended up going back to the want ads, saw sign maker wanted, like a typical sign shop guy would put in the paper, right?
Right.
I'm like, what's that all about? What's a sign maker anyway, right? It didn't seem viable, but then it seemed so real all of a sudden. And I went in, and of course, it was just talking to people, designing shit, and working on a computer. I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I love all three of those things.
Right.
And then you
I can do that.
right, and you have to use your hands. You have to work and build the signs. I'm like, yeah, I'll handle that. It wasn't my favorite, but I'm glad I ended up doing all of that work because
Yeah.
it helped me design toward the end better. It
Yeah.
helped me both design for the salespeople better and for the fabricators better.
Well, and we have similar stories, and I think it's a pretty common refrain
Yep.
in the industry in general. Is graduated with a design degree, and I decided like midway through my senior year, it's 2 a.m. I'm sitting in my boxers designing a business card, and I'm like, you know what? I really enjoy doing this. I don't know if I want to do this every day and like run creativity into the ground as a job. And I had worked for the sign shop for about 4 years at that point, doing, on table production, design, production management, and all of that. And I decided I wanted to do big things like, not live with my mother, buy my own food, those types of things. And a regional manager position had opened up with what the franchisor. So I worked for a franchise, and the franchisor was hiring. And so I'm a 22-year-old new grad with zero real world business experience. And now I'm a regional manager telling people in their second or third careers running their own business how to run that business. And the fact that anybody took me seriously is an indictment of the sign industry as a whole. But the timing worked out pretty well because right as this was like October 2003, which is right around a device called the Mamaki JV3 was released. Mm-hmm. And it was this 5-foot wide purple digital printer that all of a sudden you could do outdoor high quality inkjet printing. And the only reason that I grabbed any credibility in the industry is that my nickname in college was the high-tech redneck.
Oh, nice.
And so I have practical skills. So I tell people I can run a computer and a chainsaw. So just being able to adapt, the production side of print with the creative side of sign design, And they listened to me just long enough in that capacity that I maintained employment long enough that they could get me out of a regional manager position that I wasn't very good at because I had no business experience, and could actually do something that had an impact in my company and the industry. And that was 25 years ago. So,
And you're still there, right? I'm not trying to avoid
Yeah.
saying the name,
No,
protect
it's
the
totally
name
fine.
to protect the innocent kind of thing. But we could totally
Yeah.
promote your company. I'm not sure how they feel about that either. But so you
No,
work for
that's fine.
you've worked for the same folks this whole time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow,
No,
that's wild, dude.
and from 2000 when I started weeding vinyl to now, where I'm director of operations support, I've been through with the same company. I'm the only person I know in their mid 40s that's worked for exactly one company
Wow.
in that time. And the days of the gold watch and the pension, and I was painting doors for GM for 40 years is pretty well over. But I'm 25 years in with with our company.
Yeah, that's
And
nice.
they continue to pay me. I continue to show up, and it's an arrangement that's worked pretty well for this time.
Yeah, and things are always growing. A lot of times certain industries hit a lull. I'm a drummer.
Yeah.
Our gear hits a lull. Things hadn't changed for a while, and
Yep.
then they're starting to change. Now we got electric drums, whatever. Technology in the sign industry hit a lull for a while, and then, as you mentioned, we got outdoor printing. That really changed a lot. Then, Rena, we didn't have to weed anymore. We didn't have to pick out letters because now, as long as it was a full color photograph, which is a lot easier to sell to the customer back then,
Yeah.
it was just printing and laminate. Just get it out the door. And I thought that was great. And then more things have started to change recently. I think it's maybe the cost drop in robotic manufacturing or machinery that can do more high-tech channel letter bends automatically and things like that. What do you see in the future as, like, what's the cool technology that you see? And it doesn't even have to be in the shop. Maybe
Sure.
the warehouse, maybe in the field, or maybe the cloud. Maybe it has to do with order processing or something.
No, and this is, I would argue, we are currently in a bit of a production lull in terms of technology. We're getting a lot of bigger, better, faster, more. So the same technology we've been using for years, but it's a little bit easier to use, a little less expensive to use, a little bit faster. It can do a few more applications. So from a production standpoint, that's pretty much kind of where it's been for the last 5 or 6 years. But a byproduct of COVID is doing more with less. We have fewer staff. The staff that we have probably came from a different industry and doesn't have the background in it. So kind of the last 2 years have really been about workflow automation.
Okay.
Is finding software tools, some hardware tools, but mostly software tools and web management tools to be able to take a file from a customer that may or may not be actually ready to go.
Never.
You talked about desktop publishing a while ago.
Yeah.
A lot of the folks that are submitting design files to us that are print ready came out of things like Microsoft Publisher or Word.
Yeah.
And they are the designer for the company because they know how word art works. So being able to take that file, do all of the pre-flight tools, make sure color spaces match, all the technical things that us good nerds have to think about, and taking some of that away from the end user, and then getting that processed into workflow production, nested up onto materials so that you're maximizing your material use and all of that. And that's been the biggest change really in the past 2 years. And we struggle with it because as a franchise, I always tell people that a franchise is like 3 kids in a trench coat trying to sneak into a movie theater.
I like that.
In the trench coat, we look like an adult. We look like a giant entity. But when you pull the trench coat away, it's a lot of smaller companies that make up, our company and our buying power.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the automation solutions that are out there now are built for large independents where it's a single location or a few locations,
Gotcha.
very high volume, very high file throughput. Where our centers are smaller. Our average center is around $600,000. Where an independent's a couple million, and so a lot of these solutions are $70,000-$80,000 to implement.
Right.
And when that's that's a quarter or half of your your profit for the year.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing to implement.
If you can get it implemented, because even
Yeah.
the best laid plans, the best user interface for the exact right task for the best price, you'll still get easily half the people resistant, and maybe
Yeah.
20% never. Like they might quit before they end up using some new thing. So
Sure.
that's really challenging. What kind of solutions are you finding in which type of areas?
Well, so our company is a little unique in that we have two more primary divisions. One is signage, one is sign and graphic. So that's kind of where your experience would be. And I don't know if you've done any work. We also have with commercial print. So cut sheet, brochures, mailings, transactional prints, all of that things. All of the fun statements that you get from your bank and your health insurance and all of that. We get paid to print those. And so on the marketing and print side or the commercial print side, we have great solutions because a lot of those things, like Bank of America, when they print their prospectus for the year, they need a whole bunch of automation. And so they have tools on that piece. But sign and graphic, because of how many processes there are. So we've talked about print, but there's also routing. There's also finish cutting. There's laser engraving. There's ADA signage where you're drilling and dropping bits, or dropping dots rather.
Yeah, Braille.
And so it's a lot more disjointed than commercial print. So what we're trying, we use a product from Xerox called Free Flow Core. And that is purpose built for commercial print. And we have a bunch of centers that have implemented a lot of success stories, but we're trying to kind of either shoehorn that into the sign and graphic side and try to get that to work, or we're looking at some solutions from some other providers. But right now, that's one of our biggest challenges is trying to have a not turnkey, but as smooth and single source solution as possible without having to become our own integrator and take solutions from 6 different companies, each doing one part of the process, and build this horror show Frankenstein amalgamation of automation that really doesn't automate anything except needing to automate more things. So that's kind of what we're up against right now, and really been working on for quite some time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the technologies that are kind of exciting at the time, I mean, direct-to-substrate printing has been in the market for quite some time now, printing directly to a board.
Yep.
But we're starting to see some more creative solutions for that. Printed ADA signage, Braille signage, Americans with Disability Act. Braille signage has been something that the easiest sign to sell is the one that the government tells you have to have.
Yeah.
So it's really very convenient when the U.S. government is your salesperson. But production of those signs, if you've ever looked at a Braille sign close up, you drill a hole, you push a dot into that hole, and then you hope some jackass teenager doesn't come through and pick that dot out.
Yep.
Which it can be, it's a challenging thing to build when you have custom colors or four color printing or exotic materials, brushed aluminum, acrylic, glass, all of these things. And people always want their signage to be non-standard. So you don't want the blue restroom sign. Is you want something that is a little bit more unique to your brand, and being able to print that now is unique because we don't have to drill the hole and drop the dot anymore. Because with the newer ink technologies and devices for direct-to-substrate, we can print ADA signage. We can print one-off promotional items, and if you price it properly, it can be profitable. I mean, I have a machine that I've printed everything from coasters to whiskey bottles to skateboards. Pretty much whatever you can jam in there, you can probably turn into a graphic product. And one of my primary tasks with the company is finding new applications without a big capital investment. So how can I take a machine I already have and create a new product with that and get creative from there? And I always joke that manufacturers hate me because the first thing they do after they tell me what not to do, the second they leave, is the first thing I try. So, and they said, no matter what you do, don't print on a mirror. And I said, okay, I definitely won't do that. Have a good day.
See ya.
Okay, find me a mirror.
Right. Dude, how does the Braille work exactly? I understand the general concept. Is it actually kind of like 3D printing when it comes to the dots?
We call it 2+D.
Okay.
And I get that question a lot. It's like, oh, is it a 3D printer? And we call it 2+D because it doesn't actually build a physical object. It builds texture. And so, regular inkjet is just an array of dots. But basically, the ink technology is such that you can stack those dots on top of each other until you get that proper dome. Because just surface tension, when you put a drop of water on a board, it domes because of surface tension. And they basically engineered the ink to be able to do the same thing.
That's
and
crazy.
build the texture. It can print the Braille, and it can also print the raised element text,
That is
because that's
sweet.
another piece of ADA
So,
compliance.
so they've controlled the micro tension on each little bubble, so
Yeah,
it stacks like
each
little.
each little one, and
What?
the hot button was, is it ADA, is it legally ADA compliant? And because you can have something that
Yeah,
is the right shape, but if it doesn't have the right profile or anything like that,
yeah.
and yeah, the number of companies went through and filed a patent and also certified that it is ADA compliant.
That's
And
cool.
so now, instead of white text on a blue row mark sign, you can have a
Whatever you
beach
want.
background,
Yeah.
or the sticking point in the past when people wanted to do ADA was, well, now all of my customers want to do their brand colors, and I don't have a paint booth. I live in an area where putting a paint booth in is restrictive for EPA or OSHA regulations.
Yep.
A proper paint booth where you can, actually exhaust fumes and not have your employee pass out is a pretty big investment, in both money and space. So, you have our average size operation is like 2,500 square feet. If you're
Wow.
taking up 500 square feet of that with a paint booth,
Yep.
and that's only a small portion of your product mix, it's a tough thing to justify.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now with four color printing, I mean, you're always going to be limited to CMYK. You're not going to have true Pantone match with Pantone pigments, but you can get a lot closer to a lot more things, and you don't have to invest in a $30,000 paint booth.
Yeah. That's really great. I love that
And the
idea.
machines are going for 28K, which, if for what we're doing, is a pretty reasonable, not quite impulse buy territory, but for something that can have so much impact in a whole bunch of different places, it's not a bad investment. That's probably been the most popular new machine we've put in the last like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've seen the results of that probably.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Because I see a lot of clear Braille signs now,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at them. I'm like, that doesn't look like. There was an interim arena where people were doing color graphics on the back of clear plastic and then putting clear dots, so you could start to emulate that. But it sounds like now you could just do the whole thing in one pass.
Yeah, yeah, and things like plexiglass, because of how the raster braille system works. You actually need a material that can flex a little bit. If you were to put it into acrylic, which is it's plastic, but it's still a hard plastic, you don't get that expansion and the contraction that locks that bead into place.
Yeah.
And so you're either cracking the acrylic or you're shooting beads across the room.
Yep.
And things like aluminum, you can't do an aluminum ADA sign because it won't do the process that needs to lock that bead into place. But
Huh.
you can if you can just stick ink to the top of it. Now, none of them are vandal proof. You're always going to find a better asshole.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody wants to destroy a sign, they will destroy a sign.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. I was sitting here thinking, like, what have you had to repair?
I mean, so one of the funniest stories in that regard is back when I worked at one of our centers, we had a guy come in and he had like the standard issue, just beat to hell white F-150, and he comes in, he goes, "I'm here to offer you a service. So you guys put signs up all the time. Sometimes signs get damaged. If you ever needed a sign to be damaged, I could be your guy." And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is very illegal. I mean, I'm listening. Don't get me wrong, but but yeah. So we didn't hire the guy for legal purposes.
What a great pitch.
Yeah, seriously, it's
You're like, the redneck in me likes that.
right. Exactly. The anti-establishment guy in me really enjoys the concept of weaponized sign deconstruction, but at the same time, I have to sleep at night. But I mean, you will always find, and teenagers have always existed. Teenagers will always exist until the heat death of the universe, and you can't really account for them really in any capacity. We have some amazing anti-graffiti films now. We have some things that they can make a sign last as long as possible. But if somebody decides, you know what, I don't like that sign being there, that sign's coming down. And so at ADA specifically, there's 5 different ways to make it. Print is probably the least durable, but once somebody decides I'm going to pick a Braille dot out, they can get it out. If they're going to pick the ink off or pry the bead out, the result's going to be the same. And the nice part is replacement is so much easier because you can essentially hit a button and get a new sign with only a couple minutes worth of work.
Got the file right there.
Yep,
Yeah, there's never
exactly.
a lack of tweakers. And a lot of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
signs, like you
exactly.
mentioned, they go on government buildings, like mental health clinics and hospitals
Yeah.
and things like that, where there's just literally
Bastions of good decision making.
lonely people sitting around unsupervised, picking at the
Yep.
walls. And Braille dots are fairly easy to pop out.
They are, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's the original fidget spinner. It's you sit there. It's like bubble wrap.
Yeah.
Just sit there, pop the beads out.
Well, then you start to realize the letters come off too.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
Hey, don't give me any ideas.
Yeah. So when you first started saying that, I was thinking of, like, when they use water lasers to cut aluminum wheels. I was thinking you were shaving off the top of that, but there's no waste involved. It's an additive process. You're adding the bumps
it's
the
an
end.
additive process. The only thing you really have to take into account is adhesion.
That is really
there are
cool.
some materials
sure.
that just ink doesn't like to stick to.
Yep.
And if that's the case,
What else have you
then,
tried to put ink on that it doesn't stick to, or like
Probably
you were
chrome.
mentioning you tried the mirror right away?
I
was wondering,
any
what else?
surface that is completely non-porous. If you've ever spray painted anything and you didn't prep the surface by sanding or some sort of chemical process, the paint likes to peel because it doesn't have any tooth. It doesn't have anything to hold to. So any surface that is completely non-porous, that can't have, like the ink, for example, has some solvent in it. So if it's a plastic, it isn't sanding it. It's still very smooth, but it still has a bonding agent stuck to it. But something like polished aluminum, nothing wants to stick to polished aluminum because it just doesn't have enough for the ink to hold on to. But yeah, there are various surface preps and sprays and films. We have what I do a lot of times if I have a material that something won't stick to, I sheet it with a clear film because nobody has any idea that there's a film on it. The surface looks exactly the same as it did before, but now it has a surface on it that's actually designed to have ink stick to. Think of it like a spray primer. Same idea.
Yep.
It's putting some sort of barrier layer in between. Because I was printing a whiskey bottle. And it needs to be a relatively flat surface because you need to keep dot fidelity, which basically means you need the print head a consistent distance from whatever you're printing on, because those dots are coming in at angles as that carriage is going back and forth. And if it's landing on a curve at a varying distance, you're going to lose all of that fidelity, which is going to give you a really blurry look.
So let me understand. So I'm imagining like a Jack Daniel's bottle that has 4 square sides.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And then you set it on a platen, and then you somehow adjust the mechanism over it so it knows where the flat part is.
Yeah, well, it knows where the surface is.
So it has lasers.
So
it just knows where.
You tell it where the surface is. You give it an XY.
Okay, cool. Got it.
And then it has a brake beam sensor. It's a stationary bed, and then the bed will raise and lower.
Okay, that's
and
what I was wondering.
it'll move the object through a brake beam sensor. And if it breaks the beam, it'll lower the object until the beam shoots across again,
As high as
and
it
then it
wants
knows
it.
where top is.
Okay, cool.
It doesn't map the surface. It just knows where the highest point is.
What's that
and
axis? Is that Z? What's
Z.
the?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Z. Vertical axis is Z.
Gotcha.
And so it just knows where the highest point is. It
That's
is
cool.
trusting you
Yeah.
that around that highest point is something you can actually print on.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's neat.
Because I mean, if you think about like a golf ball, for example, there is exactly one highest point, and then from every direction and in every direction, it starts to drop around the sphere. And so if you're printing a golf ball, for example, which you can do, you have about a half-inch area that you will actually get clear print. Because that head
the angles.
Yeah,
Okay.
the head knows. Let's say it's 3 millimeters. Let's say the head gap's 3 millimeters. It is calculating if my head is moving, when I get to here and jet that ink, it's going to land right here because it's traveling at an angle. If it jets it at 3 millimeters, but the surface is actually at 5 millimeters, that ink is going to keep moving over to where it didn't intend to be.
Gotcha.
And when you take that into the array of a whole, XY coordinates of a digital print, that's thousands of dots not landing where they're supposed to.
Yeah, right.
And it basically, in layman's terms, it starts to get blurry.
Yeah, like it's almost like shooting light on a stage from different colored spotlights.
Pretty
At
much.
some
You
point
have
they're
the
gonna
area
bleed,
of focus,
right? Yeah.
and then you have everything where it spills around it.
Gotcha. That's really
Yep.
neat.
And if you ever run a laser engraver, it's when you get out of the focal length of the lens.
Right.
So of a laser engraver, when you focus that light, it's a highly calibrated version of a kid killing ants with a magnifying glass.
Yep.
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
just using a laser tube instead of the sun.
That's cool.
And in that one little area where it's focused, is where you have power, but as soon as you get past that focal length, you start to get a lot less control on what you're doing. Instead of a letter, you're getting a shape.
Right. Let's go back to software real quick.
Yeah.
Because I like that, and we talked about the Xerox solution that you found. In your search for other solutions, did you find something that might not have been a good fit for yourself managing a franchise of chain of stores? Did you find anything that was affordable for the one or two shop guys out there that really don't have anything that should probably?
All of them, again, they're pretty pricey solutions.
Yeah.
But we have Durst Group has a full suite. Durst makes large industrial direct-to-substrate machines, industrial scale. So, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million machines. And they have every piece of it, because one of the struggles with automation is that there's so many pieces of the puzzle you'd like to be able to automate.
Yeah.
Everybody, the production side, I won't say it's the easiest part, but it's the most intuitive part. It's the part that I know you need to get this file from here to here. But you also have job submission and approval. So you need an automation or a piece of the puzzle that will that allows your customer to upload a file, do online pre-flighting, and then have them see approve a proof, to then kick it over to the production piece. You also have your financial management on the end, whatever your point of sale software is. You'd love to be able to automate that. We use CoreBridge specifically, but there's lots of other solutions out there. And so each piece of that, what Durst does well with their software is that they have modules that, depending on which piece you want to automate, you can throw money at the problem, and they will give you a module that will then do that individual piece. As far as you want to take it. I mean, there are companies that operate as a web storefront where you cannot call somebody. You can upload a file, and they will send you that file, and the whole transaction will happen without any human interaction. Existentially, I don't know how we feel about that, but from a business perspective, it has a lot of potential.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place for vending machines in the world at every size of thing, right? There's a CarMax place, or is that the place with the giant car vending machines?
Oh, Carvana, where they have the car vending machines?
Right. I mean, we've got that, and we've got, and we use some as designers just here when we're selling local business signs. Use Signs 365 or something like that. It's really push button. You have to kind of know what you're doing, but not too much. They'll tell you, hey, your file sucks. Try again. They won't tell you what to try, but they won't print you some garbage and expect you to pay for it.
And the interesting piece is that things like FreeFlow Core and some of these other solutions can actually do some repair. So you can have a pretty garbage file, and as long as the fundamentals are there and it's kind of in a common mode of failure, a lot of these softwares can do the repair for you. So
what kind of stuff does it repair?
Things like mixed color spaces.
Okay, so, especially that.
Yeah. So if you have CMYK elements, RGB elements, grayscale elements, all within the same file, one's Grackle, one's Adobe RGB, and all of these things, as long as you have an idea and you can tell the software which color space it should be, then it can get rid of all your transparency errors and all of that.
Great.
And it can't spell a name right. If somebody spells their name wrong, and it's not a common English word, it can't fix that.
Right.
But if it's a common technical problem,
neither can AI.
Either than humans.
Yeah.
I mean, my last name is phonetic. I've been
my first name. It gets misspelled all the time.
No, 100%. My favorite. I was once Phil Redman. And to get from Ted Redmer to Phil Redman is quite the endeavor. But so there are things it can't do. But if it's a common mode of failure, which if you've done it for any length of time, you could probably name the top 6 things that come across your desk that you're fixing every day.
Oh yeah, and I have a new thing now. The new thing is AI generated logos.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
People thought that would save time. I'm like, not my time. I'm charging more now. I'm like, well, at least they like the logo already. I'm like, oh, you like that? Cool. Let me fix it. It's gonna take a minute, but I don't mind.
Well,
that at
and that gets into a whole bigger discussion of AI and its place in the market, in a creative market. Because if I see one more hexagonal logo with a banner and an icon somewhere, I've seen too many hexagonal logos with an icon and a banner, because it takes all of our conscience and or consciousness and puts it into the exact same thought over and over and over again, because it looks at this giant field of data and says, this is the best idea of that one field of data.
Yep.
But those other 15 solutions are also really good and
Yeah.
would give us some variety instead of the same just recycled garbage that we frequently see.
Yeah. And plus, we live
And-
here. Like, as designers, I live in the town
Yeah.
that I see the signs go up. And when I see
Oh, yeah.
some AI trash come through, I'm like, no, the people here are
Yeah.
not going to look at that and say,
Yeah.
cool sign.
No, first
They're
thing
gonna
I'm doing
just-
is I'm counting the fingers. I'm looking to see how many fingers are on that sign, and if I see a sixth one, I figure it's either the man who killed Inigo's Montoya's father, or it's AI. One of the two.
Something's happening here.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing? Oh, and the squished together letters that aren't actual real font.
Well, I've told people this before. If you've ever want to ruin somebody's life, teach them to recognize bad kerning.
Ugh.
Because then they'll start looking around and seeing all of the kerning problems and the leading problems and lack of negative space. There was an internet meme years ago of "Make my logo bigger" cream. I don't know if you ever came across it or not,
No.
but it's when you're working with a design committee and you've designed it with like good negative space around it so the design has room to breathe.
Got some balance, right?
And you smear some "Make My Logo Bigger" cream on there, and you can totally fill the space. I figure if the customer thinks, well, if I'm paying for a website design, that whole website should be my logo.
Yeah, right.
So yeah,
want
that
people to
is
see it.
yeah, right. And I drive my wife absolutely crazy because things like that drive me crazy. So I'll look at something and I'll be like, oh, they could have made that design so much better. And she looks at it as, somebody who's in the medical field getting into teaching, and she goes, I can read what it says and I don't see a problem.
It's
and I'm
fine.
like, well,
It's
and
fine.
this is something we're gonna have to talk to our therapist about.
I have the same. I work with my son, and sometimes he gets AI files.
Yeah,
He doesn't care. He cares about
Nope.
making the customer happy.
yeah.
And
100%.
I care about legacy and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I'm like, no.
And
that
it's finding
sucks.
finding that balance of practicality
I don't
and
mind, yeah.
purism that we have to exist somewhere in that space, because AI, whether we like it or not, is we just have to prepare for Skynet and hope that it makes some reasonable logos in the meantime.
Yeah. Do you have any particular challenges being the digital manager for a chain of stores? Like, what are some common problems you find with all new owners or general small shop owners? Is there a commonality with the questions you answer a lot with folks like that?
Yeah, and it comes through a lot of different pieces. I'm involved very much with the day-to-day, just make it work piece. But the biggest struggle really is helping them recognize that they are in a market that is rife with commoditization. So we used to get $12 a square foot for printed banners. Now retail is probably about $1.50. So we've got a lot of the bread and butter products that have been kind of the stuff that pays the rent have been commoditized now. You can go to a Signs 365 or a Build a Sign, all partners of ours. But helping them understand that they are in a creative industry, and that if they focus a little bit of their attention beyond the stuff to keep the lights on, there's a lot of margin in creativity.
Yep.
Is if you can just create a rectangle that says no parking, you can sell that for about $25. But if you can have something that is themed to their, obviously it has to meet legal requirements. But if it is themed to their business,
Yep.
and it's made out of more unique materials, and it's presented in a way that isn't just a blue vinyl on an aluminum parking sign, there's margin in that. And if you handle it correctly and your software and your equipment is working properly, it doesn't cost you any more.
That's the thing, dude. That's what I always tell
That's
people.
100% it.
It's a little pre-planning, man.
Yep.
Because design with a good designer takes the same amount of time. A good designer can design you something killer in an hour that a shitty one could design in an hour. Once it's designed and you approve it, the material, everything else after that is the same. So I'm like,
The material's cheap.
why did we end up with so many shitty designs on the buildings around town? It drives me crazy. So
It's because it's quick and easy, and you have to move on to the next thing.
that's it,
And,
right? Yeah, because they're in
and-
business,
and
right?
You
Yep.
touched on it to a degree, is that a good designer can produce something creative in the same time that it takes a bad designer to create something cookie cutter.
Yeah.
But people don't want to pay for talent.
I think
And that is a piece of it. And the other side of that argument is we are in a production print capacity. We are not in fine art production. So when I help people hire designers, I tell them, you want somebody creative, but you want a production designer, not a fine artist. Because a fine artist can make amazing things, but sometimes you just need a parking sign. And you need somebody that can flip that switch and work in both capacities, either something that is truly high art that you can charge through the nose for and has incredible impact and everybody loves, but sometimes you just need a name tag.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to like shift gears in and out of those modes, and that, as a filthy creative myself, that can be a hard shift to make sometimes. And knowing when you should flex that design muscle in which thing, if there's actually some room in it,
Yeah.
or if it's just something knock it out, the customer doesn't care and be done with it.
Yeah, a lot of that is just listening. I think that AI
Yep.
can't do. Like, we're actually listening. Like, oh,
Sure.
you just need a parking sign this time. Where, like, last week they had a whole decorative mural in
Yeah.
the lobby. So
Yep.
it's definitely a difference between graphics and
Yeah.
signage. And my thought
Well-
is a sign has a job. If a sign
Yeah.
isn't directing you or informing you, then it's not doing its
Yeah.
first job.
Yeah, and the other piece of that and implementing creativity isn't even necessarily in the design. It's understanding what your equipment is capable of and what the materials are capable of.
Yep.
So let's say most of our centers have a machine that's probably about $18,000. It's a 64-inch wide printer that can print on a wide variety of things. That machine doesn't care if you load banner that you can charge $1.50 a square foot for, vinyl to stick on a yard sign that you can charge $1.25 a square foot for, or canvas that you can mount on a wall and charge $12 a square foot installed for, that can completely transform a space. It's the exact same printer. There is no additional capital investment other than the media costs a little bit more, and you can do so much more things with it. The things that they're doing with wrap films now, conformable films, everybody the logical one, the reason they're called wrap films, they're vehicle wraps.
Yep.
But we've done wall installations. We've wrapped dumpsters.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago, we had a center in Dover, Delaware. There's a horse racing track in Dover. And are you familiar with carriage racing?
Sure.
So the thing that they haul around is called a sulky.
Oh, that
the
little
carriage,
thing?
Yeah, the carriage is called a sulky.
Oh, crazy. Have
And
you
I had
seen
a
that,
center
Rena?
call me.
Have you seen
I'm
carriage
like, do
racing?
they have that in Kentucky?
Well, it's
I'm
just
sure.
it's so
Yeah.
dangerous looking. It's literally like
yeah.
a dude. And have you ever seen the two-wheeled buggies you pull behind a bicycle?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Imagine,
a Burley trailer?
Yeah. Imagine a human, a full-size human on a Burley being pulled by a racehorse.
Yeah. Yep. And the track wanted to sell advertising on the sulky. And we had to figure out how to wrap a sulky
Without slowing it down,
and
right?
build a graphics kit to tow behind a horse. And that is what I try to impress upon them, is that you don't have a banner printer. You have a printer that, depending on what you jam into that machine,
Yep.
will turn almost anything you can think of into a graphic product. And so that is the other flexibility and creativity piece, is you have to have the talent to be able to implement that, but you already have the hardware to do it. And a big part of my role and my team's role is teaching people what materials are available, what the capabilities, what the limitations of those materials are.
Yeah.
Because just like ink won't stick to some things, vinyl won't stick to some things, and we have all the big trouble we have in our industry right now is paint. Because all of your interior paints are designed to be easy to clean, nothing will stick to them.
Right.
No VOCs, because people don't want to breathe chemicals, which seems pretty reasonable.
Sure.
But it really doesn't like to stick to paint that has components in it so it's not supposed to stick to it.
Yeah. Or
Vinyl
stuff.
all of our things. And the number of calls that I've gotten where, oh yeah, it looked great, took some photos, came back the next day and it was on the ground, or like half of it has a bubble. I worked with a center in Charleston, South Carolina. They were doing work for a high school, and government entity works with children, so they are super, super cognizant of what they put on the walls, which is great. However, we did find that even our most aggressive films, it was a painted cinder block wall, and we probably tried 5 or 6 different films, and I think the most we got out was 48 hours before it started to bubble.
Wow.
And that ended up having to be an application where it had to be paint.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so knowing what materials are out there and that there's some applications are so much more profitable than others for the exact same amount of machine time and mental bandwidth
Yep. Yep.
is pretty key component in terms of getting new members kind of in the industry and excited about the industry.
Yeah.
I always tell them that because they're always they're drinking from a fire hose in opening training because a lot of our new members they're in their second or third career. They were middle management at a large corporation. They got fired. We love recessions in our
Yeah,
industry
yeah.
because when people get their severance package and they decide I never want to get laid off again.
Right.
I want to go work for myself and kind of do my own thing. It's great for franchising, but they come in with no experience. And so when the first couple months they're just kind of learning the ropes of things, but you'll notice the conversations start to change. They'll start throwing sign terms in, and they're like things like weeding. Oh yeah, I was weeding the sign the other day. I was like, you're starting to sound like a sign person, but you officially check the box when you become a sign pervert. You become a sign pervert when you can't walk past an interesting sign without walking up to it and picking at it and
Touching
kind of
it.
trying to figure it out how
How'd
it
they
was
get
made,
that on there?
how they stick it on the wall. And my wife laughs at me all the time because I'll be like at a restaurant, like peering around the back of a sign, like, oh, they edge lit it with LEDs.
Yeah.
And it's low voltage. There's the switch over there. And she's like, you need a hobby.
Like, this is my hobby, my passion, my
Yeah.
life. I was commenting
much.
on the fucking brass plates somebody had etched in their QR codes at the restaurant the other day. All the tables didn't have menus. They had brass plates with QR codes.
That is a long-term commitment to a very short-term application, but I'm here for it.
What am I? I'm like, I just want a menu. I'm not scanning your code to read the menu. Then you got my information. I'm like, clever. Yeah, people are wild when they realize. And I think to your earlier point was if you could just break through the creativity part, if you could envision more, like it doesn't just have to be blue. If you've got a printer that can do literally anything, like I'm looking at Windows right now, we do perforated window wrap. People go crazy for that stuff because of the value. It provides a big graphic and it's relatively cheap. Well, a lot of times people are like, oh, it's a background with the words tacos, burritos, enchiladas. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Where's your logo? You don't have a logo? So right now I take all windows as one, and I've got a giant lion that goes about 40 feet across the window peeking over the top just because. I think that looked way cooler. Like, in other words,
It's so much more engaging.
Well, and here's the point I was about to make is that a lot of sign companies, I don't even know how your franchise does it. Most franchises try to capture money as a line item for design or historically have. Yeah. And I'd always found that was the hardest pushback I found from customers. So we just fold ours into it's just the one nut. If you want to shop with us, the square foot price includes installation and design. You can't peel it out. But the thing is, I put the design time in because I'm pretty fast. I'll go show them on the iPad. I'm like, here's what you could get for this amount of money. And they're like,
pretty shiny,
can you
isn't it?
send that to
Yeah.
me? And I'm like, can you give me a deposit? And anyway, by showing them you could work that fast and you're that close to what they really want,
right?
And it's way more than just letters on blue, that customer's coming back. Like this guy I'm doing Windows for likes this concept so much. Do you do printing? We need menus. And I'm like, I don't not do printing anymore. I'm doing printing now.
The most profitable but also most frustrating phrase we always hear is, "Oh, I didn't know you did that." And that is it's frustrating because we obviously we do a lot of marketing to kind of teach people what we do.
Yeah.
But we have the print industry and signage and all of it is just such a wide breadth of things, and it goes back to people not realizing that some things can be graphics products. We live in a post Etsy world, so I mean you can get your koozies and all of that, but a lot of people don't understand the breadth of product that a sign operation can do. It's not just your banners, your yard signs, etc. And you can get really creative with those things. I love my favorite applications are when people do like street wraps, where you're doing the buildings, the windows, the sidewalks. Because you can completely transform an environment. We have a division of our company called XGD. It's Experiential Graphic Design.
Oh, great!
It is looking at a space as a canvas and there's nothing off the table. So anything you walk into a conference room, you look around, anything in there can have some sort of branding, etc. And I love when we'll do like a street festival or something like that in the downtown area, and they wrap the first three stories of a building and the sidewalks and graphics out into the streets and all the windows and street lights, all of these things.
Nice.
And that is where that's when you look around and the sign industry kind of flexes its versatility.
And the funny thing is, people don't even know that that's the sign industry, right?
Nope,
I
not at all.
didn't. I was sitting here thinking about like a jewelry store that I've seen, like, and the whole building like turns into like gifts.
Yeah.
Would that be a sign company that probably wrapped the whole building?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
it's applying
so
a graphic film to
cool.
a surface. Yeah. And
Wow.
the films that we have now are freaking wild. Some of the stuff, like 3M, for example, they did a demo. They have a film, LX480. It's a extremely conformable non-PVC film. And they took a 5-gallon bucket and just stretched the film across the surface of the bucket. You hit it; it's heat activated essentially. So you hit it with heat, it gets soft. You can push your hand through to where it almost looks like a glove.
Like a latex glove, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's extremely conformable, but the really wild part when nerds like me get really pumped is when they take their hand out, they hit it with heat again, and it shrinks back to flat.
Whoa.
So if
That's cool.
because I know I have never personally screwed up a sign install, but if I were to do that, being able to hit it with heat again and reset it to flat is invaluable. That's why, taking it back, I'll sound like an old man for a minute, but in I guess probably about 2001, 2002, before vehicle wraps were really a thing,
Right.
and even before outdoor digital printing was a thing,
Yep.
because the ink technology wouldn't last outdoors because of UV light. But there was a device called the Gerber Edge, and John, I don't know if you've ever worked with one.
Yep.
It was basically a fax machine. If you remember the old roll toner fax machines.
I was just complaining about those the other day, except
Yup.
they had 4 colors you had to worry about.
Well, they had like 50 colors, but you had 4-color process, and then you had all of these other foils. Well, we did a 53-foot trailer box. 53 feet long, 8 feet high. But the edge would only print 11 1/4 inches high.
Yeah.
And so we had
Stripes.
10 panels that you all had to be aligned for 53 feet
Yeah.
on a tractor trailer with rivets and seams and all of this. And and those films didn't have air egress technology where all the bubbles come out the back, and it was not a conformable film. So yeah, we'd installed it in July in Maryland. So we'd get up at like 4 a.m. before the sun came up, because as soon as the sun hit, it would turn to silly putty.
Yeah, right.
But all of these films now, they're obviously they're much wider, so they're a little bit easier to cover larger surface areas. Crazy conformability. The technology that goes into adhesives is its own science.
Oh, yeah.
It's sticky in this environment, but it's not sticky until you want it to be. You can slide it around for alignment. You have all of these different things you can do with these films,
Yep.
and that just opens up so many possibilities with what the applications can be. And you don't have to have the most skilled installer out there to make that application happen. We work with
lot more
like
forgivable.
PDAA, the Professional Decal Application Association, and that's it's kind of your local 135 for pipe fitters, but
Yeah.
instead it's a bunch of vinyl jockeys
That's
that can
awesome.
they can hop on and stick things to stuff. But you work with them for where you have to. But if you can have Mary on the table that can also, by the way, she's got the skills to wrap part of the back of a van, then the films make it a lot easier to do that. So you don't need to you hired your most skilled labor for every single job, but use the talents when they can.
Yeah, that's great. What are your shops known for selling? Like, if you look at the main thing that is sold through your chain of shops, is it channel letters or banners?
We are primarily print and apply graphics.
Cool. Okay.
So we have centers that do more advanced fabrication. We have plenty of centers with rotary cutters, routers, finishing cutters, lasers, all of that.
Yep.
But we are in the in our legacy. So our legacy brands all have speed-based names.
Yeah.
So signs by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Signs now.
Yep.
You know, we built ourselves on the idea of a fast. Well, I can't use fast because that's one of our competitors.
Yeah. Well, it's the only one. I mean, there's only like 5 maybe I could think of. I can't think of that many.
Yeah,
There's
and we own a bunch of them. So
Right.
it's we I was telling Rena that we're kind of, if you're familiar with Yum Foods.
Yeah, right.
You know, you have your Taco Bell, A&W, KFC, all of that.
Yeah.
And that's basically us. Is we have all our smaller sub brands. But it's most a lot of your printed films applied to sheets. So you know, rigid signage, some dimensional stuff. And yeah, it's one of the harder questions to answer based on what we've already been talking about, because there's so many other applications.
Yeah, well,
a lot of vehicle graphics, and you know, banners and yard signs are a unfortunate reality of our business. That's what people know us as.
I like those though. Because
yeah.
they're temporary. They're meant to be taken down and stored or thrown away and bought again. So it brings the customer
if you
back.
need a number of a guy that can come out and make any sign temporary, I might still have it from 2002 when he came through and offered direct signs for us.
I used to, here on where I live on Route 66 in the center of Oklahoma City now. Oh my God, there are so many shitty signs up and down. They're just broken. And I have a phone number I'm just going to start handing out to people, like, report crappy signs, because I don't even want to be the one to have to do them. There's too many, but there's so many that, what am I going to be, the sign guy that complains like, hey, your sign's shitty, maybe I'll help you with it. And anyway, but there's so many bad signs that golly.
Well, it's actually the guy that he didn't get me hired, but by coworker's boyfriend, we called him Sign Jesus, because he could resurrect any sign. You know, because again, the films at the time weren't that great, so you'd lay it down, it would get a wrinkle. He was the only one in the building that could lift it up, peel it, you know, hand cut a little. Like if you'll lose the dot on an eye, he'd be the guy with the X-Acto cutting a fresh one and sticking it on there.
Save that spare over there. I need that. That was me teaching my son the other day. I'm like, you're the boss of the vinyl. You tell the vinyl who's in charge. It's okay. Rip it. Feel the tension. Feel where it breaks. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And so we just I guess it's been about a year and a half ago now, we launched a installation only franchise.
There you go.
Because one of the struggles that our sign companies are always coming across is finding somebody that's reliable.
Yeah.
You know, you have 2 tiers of your sign installer. You have Chuck in a truck. That, you know, he has like a 6-foot extension ladder and a drill, and that's all he does. And you trust him to hang a sign on a U channel. And then you have your PDAA, highly certified, highly trained. They could, you know, they could wrap anything. And there's a big gap in between.
Right.
And so, you know, there are some national companies that we've worked with in the past, but we were struggling with it enough that we opened our own. And so we actually just finished up a graduating class for our fifth location.
Yeah, what's it called?
And
let's hype this, because I know like installers are hard to find, and that's all I see on LinkedIn is people are trying to find installers. So what's this called?
It's a true install. And part of it, and one of the things that I do a lot of the application training itself, is the mechanical side. So teaching people all the exciting world of drywall anchors, and you know how to drill into various surfaces, how to apply films. Why is applying a film on brick different than a painted wall or cinder block, or all of these things, and all the things you need to account for a successful installation. And so that's so far solved a number of problems, and it's been pretty popular because exactly what you said. Installation was one of the hardest things to run a sign operation, because you can have somebody that's really great at designing and producing signs, but digging a post hole is a different skill.
Yep.
And you know, you can't expect to have an employee that can do all of those things.
Yeah. Or not to enjoy them both. It's a totally different mindset, right? I mean, anybody could drill a hole, but there aren't too many people who take pride in the hole and will do it day after day, for example.
Yeah, exactly. There are not a lot of people that step back and say,
take a look at that.
You go. That is. Do you see how round that hole is?
They mock others' holes,
and it is the perfect depth. I'll have you know.
Yep, perfect roundness, the sharpness of the edge from edge to hole.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
So no, that's important, and I'm glad you're starting that, because I've seen installer networks kind of come and go. So it's been a historical problem with the sign industry.
Yeah.
We seem
and
to
they're
have
great for project-based solutions. So,
Yeah.
like, let's say Citibank is rebranding.
Right.
Great. Let's find a national installer. They'll hit all the locations. But for, the onesies, twosies, or, I need 10 of something of something installed. That is where we fell apart with the national companies because
Right.
they are invested in large rebrands and large installations.
Yeah.
Hanging a parking sign is not cost effective for a company like that.
Yep. Yeah,
It's not really cost effective for us either, but it's a gateway into more involved installation.
it is. There's a tricky ladder to climb as you build a sign company. Teaching my son how to build a vinyl shop. And I keep telling him, like, how far do you want to build? Because the more you take on in types of jobs or equipment, now you're forced into supporting that piece of equipment.
Yep.
It's kind of like putting furniture into your house, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Like, just don't put it all in at once. Just put
Right.
one piece at a time and live with it. Do you like it? Where does it fit? If it doesn't, get rid of it, swap it out. But I think the same thing with pieces of equipment and people starting. So it sounds like you guys got all of your franchisees set up with like one core killer piece of equipment that I'm sure cuts too, right? But you probably don't do a lot of cutting on that
define
printer.
cutting. So
Well, I mean, like, do you trace cut out? Say you cut a vinyl on the print
contour
machine.
cutting. Yeah, we do a ton of contour cutting. Our base package is going to be a 5-foot wide printer and a paired plotter.
Nice.
And the computer controlled X-Acto knife we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Those are the two core pieces. And kind of a big part of my role is helping them determine where they go next from that, because that can produce an incredible amount of product based on what you put in it.
Yeah.
And the machines now are pretty fast, pretty easy to use. But usually there's one of two paths. They either go into direct-to-substrate. That's where they take the adhesive film out of the equation and print directly to the sheet.
Love that.
Or, because that's where they need more print capacity or more production capacity. They'll go that direction.
Yeah.
The other way is more versatile, and I kind of prefer when they need more versatile production capacity. That's when they get into primarily cutting. So that's when they'll get their first router or their first laser engraver or something
Yeah.
that can produce something easily that isn't a rectangle.
That's neat.
And what I like about that, again, it goes back to the creativity conversation, is you can start to do a lot more interesting stuff.
Yeah.
You can only sell so many rectangles before they all just start looking like rectangles. They're super pretty rectangles, and they're different colors, and they say different things, and that's great. They're all rectangles. But when you can start to do more creative, like building things and doing, we have a center in Orlando that does amazing. Like they do a lot of like private homes, but also corporate environments where like they want a meeting room, or somebody wanted their kid's bedroom to look like the holodeck from Star Trek.
Right.
I almost said Star
Wow.
Wars and pissed off a lot of nerds, but Star Trek.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so they have the cutting equipment to cut all of these shapes, fabricate all of these shapes, backlight it with LED, and make these really immersive environments. And that's why I love cutting for that purpose. Now, that does require somebody to think more creatively. It's a lot easier to say, I'm making something, now I want to make more of that thing. That's a pretty linear path. I need a machine that prints faster or prints on more materials. I can do more of the thing I'm already doing.
Right.
But looking at a stack of boards and thinking I can turn a room into the holodeck from Star Trek with the boards on that floor and the machine in that room.
Yeah.
But I need to figure out how to do that and make it look right and how to mount it. And we don't do a ton of electrical. There's liability reasons, there's training reasons.
Yeah.
And it's just so involved. So we don't really do a ton of that. But even with LED being as prevalent as it is now, it's all low voltage.
Right.
So you have an
Easy.
Electrician come in, wire a plug,
Done.
and then you can hook up the ballast or the power unit or whatever it is that controls it all.
Yeah.
And it's sticking stuff to stuff, and we're real good at sticking stuff to stuff.
That's our job, sticking stuff to stuff.
Pretty much.
Have you made anything beautiful for your own home?
Well, so I have two little girls. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I've been in the sign industry their entire lives. And it's really easy to be dad of the year every year when whatever their interest is at the moment, you can wrap their wall in their bedroom with. Totally. Or my oldest daughter is just head over heels for dogs. Anything dog related. We made up a term. She gets dog distracted. If she's trying to do something and there's a dog nearby, she gets dog distracted. But being able to just have them go in, and they love coming into the office because it's like this big production playground. And they're like, Daddy, I want to make, I want a holographic decal of our dog. And so showing them, like taking a photo of our dog Jolene and trimming out her head and putting it in a background or putting it on something silly, and then setting up the cut paths and showing them how that process works. And at the end, one of the things I don't have as somebody who's primarily in an office is what I call the step back moment. And I didn't come up with the term, but it's when you finish something and, like, say you're building, you're hanging a picture on the wall.
Right.
You knock the hook in, you hang it up on the wall, you step back, and you can look at it and say, I did something. Excel spreadsheets don't scratch that itch. But when my girls can come in and they have their little water bottle that they take to school, and it has a decal that they made with their dog's name on it, and they saw that process from start to finish, that's cool. And I ride motorcycles. I used to ride motorcycles on a racetrack, and everybody wants their own custom, their number and their sponsors, or whatever it is. And I used to do that for friends all the time. I'm really involved with cycling, and cyclists are weird people that fit really well with sign people. And so, it's my personal bicycle is straight gauge tubing. So it's just it doesn't have all these wild shapes of like carbon fiber and all this. And so I templated my bike, and every couple of months I completely change the design and theme it to whatever it is at the time. And that's that I can wrap that whenever I feel like it. And so that's I love showing my girls that if you want to make something your own, there's a lot of options for that, and the sign industry does a great job of doing that.
Yeah, I think it's good to pass on that knowledge that here's what people can do. Here's how these things came to existence. You can too. It's kind of that vibe.
It's not an easy road. Graphic design, like we started this conversation off with, is graphic design is not an easy path. It is right up there with becoming a musician. It is something that you are passionate about and you have a unique talent for, and so do a whole lot of other people. And you need to find a way to stand out in a very, very crowded market that doesn't appreciate your talent.
Yeah.
And so I love showing them the value of creativity. And I went through college. It was 3 art majors and a music major. And I said the 4 of us are going to staff the restaurants and coffee shops of America because we have 4 very creative people that are probably going to have a struggle.
Yeah.
But one of them is in broadcasting. One is now in the defense industry. One of them runs his own marketing company, and I'm here.
Yeah.
So
there's always that one guy that goes the military way.
Pretty much.
I got that guy
exactly.
too. But they all succeed.
I can't make it pretty. Let's blow it up.
Yeah, I'm like, what exactly are you succeeding at? He's like, I can't tell you. I'm like,
yeah, right, exactly. I have a very interesting job that you can't know about.
It's like, you need some lettering for them bombers, or
yeah, yep.
That's
I can't tell you what I'm doing, but I'm buying my 3rd new BMW this week, so the money's all right.
All right. Foreign services. Gotta love it. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, because I think, there's not a lot of great radio shows to listen to for signed people and people in the shop, and a lot of us use our hands and eyeballs in the field. So ideally, I've been recording this over here on audio. That's why I haven't recorded any video. But in a couple of days, I'll get this audio put up.
I've got a face for audio, so we're good.
Well, I don't know. When I concentrate too much on what the video is, the audio lacks. Yep. And then also, it's just me. So if I have to edit 2 things, it's too much.
Oh, sure.
So my thought is to record the audio, make a great audio podcast with regular edits for the radio crowd, and then, if we like it, we can just come back on here for 5 minutes and do pop-ups and just say, hey, it's blah, 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 and we did a thing. And, it could be cool. These are all new. So I did one with Dan Martino last week. He has David Martino.
David Martino
from Martino Signs over in Pennsylvania. And, nobody knows each other, but it's funny. The more I talk to signed people, we all should know each other. It's just like, this is all this.
It is. I joke about it, but it really is kind of like the mob. Is everybody manages to run into everybody and know everybody? It's 6 degrees of HP.
Yeah.
It's everybody knows everybody through something somehow, and it's a fun industry to be in, and I like having the 30,000 foot view of a lot of it. Is,
Yeah.
I'm not in the trenches is making signs and designs anymore outside of where it's kind of like a hobby or for fun.
Yeah.
Which when I was at 2 a.m. designing a business card in my boxers is I realized I
yeah.
didn't want to be every day.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but it's a fun industry to be in, and I think we have a problem right now of getting young people interested in signage.
Yeah, but the interesting
and
thing
looking
is,
at it practical side of design.
there you go. And that was the thing you hit on really early that I think can't be said enough. For those people that are creative now, want to continue to be creative and realize that simply content creator is not really a job unless you're selling something else. Being a rock star is not a thing. Being an actor, like those are really difficult. But if you are truly a creative and you're especially a graphic designer, sign industry is the most practical application of design anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not printed like business cards, printed big things like folders and, like you said, programs on up to banners, to the car wraps, to the sides of buildings. That is a really practical application of design, and most of it is temporary. It goes away. It has to be designed again. Once you learn the skills of sign design, like designing in scale and knowing what you're measuring and how it's being applied to the object, man, you could go really far. So I hope. I have 3 kids myself, and one of them has caught the bug.
No.
And you've been showing it to your daughters. Who knows if one of them's going to catch the bug? But I think a lot of younger folks are realizing that the job market sucks. They don't want to work in an office. Those 3 creative avenues I listed earlier really are not viable ways of making a living, especially if they're introverted, kind of like I just want to be me kind of kids.
Sure.
Sign industry is great. Now, if we could just get some
you'll
of them,
never do the same thing twice.
No.
Every day is going to be a little bit different.
Yep.
And that especially for kids today and their rock and roll music, being able to do something a little bit different every day, and not just you're not doing data entry. You're not working in a call center. It's not just mindless labor. It takes something that you're really passionate about and applies just enough of a sprinkle of I could get paid for this. That lets you pay a bill and do something you love.
Yeah. You could duck the man and get paid.
Yeah.
And think about becoming an installer while you're at it.
There you go. But you got to have those round holes.
Yeah, man.